At the will reading, I learned exactly how much my parents thought I was worth $1. I watched them laugh, actually laugh, as the lawyer handed my sister, Madeline, a check for $9.9 million. Cameras clicked, relatives clapped politely, and my mother leaned back in her chair like a queen watching her favorite child receive a crown. Then the lawyer slid something toward me. Not a folder, not a check, just a single crisp bill. My father didn't blink. "Go earn your own, Evelyn." My mother smirked, eyes glinting with that familiar disappointment. Some kids just don't measure up. Heat rushed to my face, but I swallowed every word. I thought that moment would break me. Instead, it exposed something they never expected. A sealed letter my grandfather left only for me, and the first clue in a truth powerful enough to shatter everything they built. If you asked anyone who knew the Carter family growing up who the favorite child was, they wouldn't even need to think. They'd smile politely, tilt their head a little and say, "Oh, that's easy, Madeline." They wouldn't be wrong. My sister, Madeline Carter, was the kind of child parents brag about for years. The kind who played Mozart by age 7, won statewide debate by 12, and was invited to youth leadership conferences before she could even drive. Her report cards were framed. Her photos were turned into holiday cards. Every milestone was a celebration, complete with invitations, catered appetizers, and floral centerpieces. Everything she touched felt rehearsed for an audience. Then there was me, Evelyn, the daughter no one remembered to introduce. When relatives visited, they'd step through the front door, beam at Madeline, hug her, compliment her hair, her awards, her future. Then they'd glance at me with the same expression people give to a houseplant, vaguely appreciative, but mostly unaware I existed. I used to think I was being dramatic. Kids exaggerate. Memories distort. But no, my childhood was one long hallway of closed doors, muffled conversations, and the quiet understanding that love was a currency, and I didn't have enough to buy any. There was a moment, one of those tiny, decisive moments you don't realize scarred you until much later. I was 11. I had just won first place at the county science fair with a project on soil acidity. I ran into the kitchen, breathless, holding my blue ribbon like it was a ticket to finally be seen. "Mom, look! I won!" She didn't even turn around. She was polishing one of Madeline's trophies, the golden plate reflecting warm sunset light across the living room. "That's nice, honey. Put it somewhere safe." "It's first place," I added, quieter. She hummed like she hadn't heard. By dinner, the ribbon was gone. I never found out where it went. That night, I heard her laughing on the phone with my aunt. "Madeline accomplished so much this month. Honestly, she's keeping us busy." "Evelyn? She's doing fine. Nothing big." Nothing big. The phrase stuck to me like dust. My father, Henry Carter, wasn't unkind. He was simply absent even when he was in the room. His affection was a scale that always tilted in Madeline's favor. He'd place a proud hand on her shoulder after every recital. "You're going far, sweetheart." To me, he'd say things like, "You're steady, Evelyn. Reliable. That's good. Good, the way an old vacuum cleaner is good enough." I spent most of my childhood fading into the background, setting tables while they celebrated her, washing dishes while they discussed her future, doing chores quietly so I wouldn't get in the way. By 13, I learned how to walk without making noise. By 15, I learned silence was easier than trying. By 17, I became the kind of girl who blended into wallpaper. It wasn't that they didn't see me. It was that they chose not to. The one exception, my only refuge, was Grandpa Walter, my mother's father. He was nothing like them. Where they were sharp, he was gentle. Where they were polished, he was soft around the edges, like time had carved him into a kinder shape. Every weekend he'd drive over and say, "Evie, pack your bag, the lake's calling." I always went. The lake house was our haven. Old wood, creaking stairs, windows that glowed gold at sunset. It smelled like pine, campfire smoke, and something warm I could never name. Walter kept 2 fishing rods on the dock. One was newer, smooth and varnished. The other was older, carved with his initials. He always handed me the carved one. "Why?" I once asked. "The new one's nicer." "It's not about nice, Evie," he said. "It's about truth. People look at the surface and think they see everything, but what matters is underneath." He dipped the rod into the water. Still water tells the truth if you know how to listen. I didn't fully understand, but I never forgot it. With him, I wasn't the forgotten daughter, the afterthought, the shadow trailing behind Madeline's shine. I was simply Evelyn, and that felt like enough. Looking back now, I think Walter saw the cracks in our family long before anyone else did. He saw the favoritism, the quiet cruelty, the way my parents placed their hopes and investments on one daughter and used the other to balance the household's invisible ledger. But he never confronted them, not directly. Walter understood people too well for that. Instead, he spent years teaching me to observe, to listen, to recognize patterns and inconsistencies. He taught me to see people the way accountants saw numbers beyond the surface, beyond the performance. Back then, I thought those lessons were just bonding moments between an old man and his granddaughter. I had no idea he was preparing me for the exact moment I sat at that will reading table, watched my sister receive $9.9 million, and watched a single dollar slide toward me like a verdict. If someone had told me then that Walter had left something behind just for me, something powerful enough to unravel every lie my family had ever built, I would have laughed. But that was before the sealed letter, before the key, before the truth he wanted me, and only me, to uncover. Before everything changed, I sat in my car long after the will reading ended, the cold leather pressing against my back while my mind replayed every second of what had just happened. The $1 bill lay on the passenger seat like a crime scene photo, flat, crisp, humiliating in its simplicity. But what caught my breath wasn't the insult. No. That. I had been trained for my entire life. It was the envelope, cream-colored, heavy, sealed with wax. "For your eyes only, Miss Carter." That's what Mr. Dalton, the lawyer, had said as he placed it into my hand deliberately, almost ceremonially. My mother's smile twitched, just slightly. My father's eyes narrowed. Madeline, confused, looked between us like sensing a storm she wasn't prepared for. They weren't expecting this. They weren't expecting anything to be left to me at all. I broke the seal with my thumb, hearing the soft crack of wax like the first note of a long, slow unraveling. Inside was a small brass key, warm from my palm, and a handwritten note, just one line. "Start where the truth was first bent. Walter." My grandfather's handwriting was unmistakable. Even, patient strokes. A little old-fashioned. Like he wrote each letter with intention. My breath caught in my throat. "What truth?" I whispered, though I knew no one could hear me. I leaned my head back against the headrest, letting my eyes close. But the memories came anyway, uninvited, sharp, undeniable. It was 14 years ago. A humid summer afternoon at the lake house. Madeline had just been accepted into a prestigious youth leadership academy, her third selective program that year, and my parents were talking loudly about which Ivy League colleges would fight to offer her early admission. I stood at the kitchen counter slicing lemons for lemonade. I remember the sting on my fingertips, the smell of citrus mixing with the scent of pine drifting in through the open windows. My father said, "She's exceptional. Truly born for greatness." My mother laughed a tinkling, satisfied laugh. "We always knew. Some kids just rise naturally." Then, after a pause, Evelyn helps in her own way. Like I was a broom. Useful. Replaceable. Stored in the closet until needed. I remember gripping the knife handle so hard my knuckles turned white. Later that evening, while everyone else celebrated Madeline's latest milestone with strawberry pie and sparkling cider, I escaped to the dock. My legs dangled over the water as the sun sank low, turning the lake into molten gold. Walter sat beside me, hands folded, his gaze fixed on the rippling surface. He didn't ask why I was there. He never did. After a long silence, he said only, "People bend the truth the way wind bends trees. Quietly, gradually, until no one remembers what it looked like straight." I stared at the lake. "What does that mean?" He gently nudged my shoulder with his. "One day, you'll understand." That sentence echoed now, in the dim interior of my parked car, with the letter trembling in my hands. Start where the truth was first bent. The lake house. Of course. It was the first place Madeline became the gifted child, and I became the supporting role. It was where my parents learned to perform their perfect family facade, where they started twisting reality to fit the version of life they wanted people to see. And it was the place Walter loved most, the place he protected, the place he never let anyone alter. What had he hidden there? What truth had been bent? My phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. Mom, where are you? Madeline wants to talk to you. I turned the phone face down without replying. My hands were already gripping the steering wheel. The drive to the lake house took 2 hours, but it passed in a blur of headlights and rising anxiety. Rain clouds gathered overhead, thick and heavy like they were carrying something more than water. By the time I pulled into the familiar gravel driveway, the world was dim and still. The house stood exactly as it always had, weathered wood siding, wide porch, screen door that creaked every time you opened it. A place frozen in time, untouched by the curated perfection of my parents' suburban home. I stepped out of the car, gravel crunching beneath my shoes. I slipped the brass key into my pocket. My fingers closed around it instinctively, like it was a pulse alive, urging me forward. Inside, the air smelled like cedar and memory. Dust motes floated in the dull light seeping through the windows. I walked straight to Walter's study, the room he always kept locked unless we were reading together. My heart hammered. I reached for the key. It slid into the lock with a soft metallic click. The sound felt final, like a line I couldn't uncross. When the door opened, I sucked in a slow breath. Stacked neatly on the desk were files, binders, envelopes, notebooks. As if he had known, with absolute certainty, that I would come here, that I would need answers. A yellowed sticky note rested on top of the stack. If you're here, Evie, then the time has come. My throat tightened. For a moment, I stood perfectly still, surrounded by the quiet weight of everything Walter had left behind. The lake house creaked softly around me, as if the walls themselves exhaled, relieved that someone had finally arrived who was willing to hear the truth. Then I turned on the desk lamp and began. The study looked exactly the way Walter left it, like he had simply stepped out for a walk and would be back any minute. His old leather chair, sunken and cracked from years of use. The brass lamp with the pull chain he refused to replace. The stack of fishing magazines he always claimed he would catch up on eventually. But the part that struck me most was the silence. Not empty silence, not the cold, dismissive kind I grew up with. This silence felt alive, watching, waiting. I eased the door shut behind me and moved toward the desk. The wood was worn smooth where Walter's arms had rested during long afternoons of reading. I could still see faint indentations from his pen, scattered like tiny fingerprints of thought. The first binder had a label in his handwriting, "Foundation Years Under Review." A chill ran up my spine. I opened it. Inside were financial statements, transaction logs, emails printed in neat stacks. I skimmed them quickly, my eyes catching on numbers that didn't make sense, payments that looped between accounts, amounts rounded in unnatural ways, transfers just under federal reporting limits. I leaned closer, heart thudding. My father's signature appeared again, and again, and again. My throat tightened. Walter wasn't sloppy. If he printed something, it meant he wanted someone me to see it. I flipped another page. A sticky note in the corner read, "Evie, patterns never lie," I whispered. "What were you trying to tell me, Grandpa?" My fingers trembled as I opened the next binder. This one was thinner but heavier in meaning. Board decisions amendments. Inside were memos addressed to Walter. Recommendation to shift unused funds. Proposed reallocation. Expedite approval signatures. Most were typed. But the signatures? The signatures were wrong. Walter's real signature was fluid, looping. The ones in these documents were jagged, forged. My stomach clenched. Someone had been redirecting funds without Walter's consent, and he'd known. Evelyn? I jolted, spinning around. No one was there, just my own voice echoing back in the tight room. Nerves. I was letting the tension get inside my head. I turned back to the desk, breathing slowly. There was still a stack of envelopes to go through. The top one was heavier, sealed, marked, confidential to be opened by Evelyn Carter only. My heart hammered. Another one? Another message he left for me and only me? I tried to steady my hands as I broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Not instructions. Not an explanation. A list of dates. Dozens of them. Going back years. I frowned. The dates looked random at first. Then something clicked. These were the same dates on the suspicious transaction logs I'd flagged earlier. On the bottom of the page, Walter had written, "Track the days they came to help." The truth hides in repetition. I sank into the chair, gripping the paper. The days they came to help. My father had visited the lake house every time there was a major foundation decision. My mother often joined him, bringing baked goods and excuses, fussing over Walter as if she were the perfect daughter. But the dates? They fell on weekdays. Workdays. Days when, apparently, they were away, on business trips. Instead, they were here, using Walter, or controlling what he signed, or forcing signatures he didn't want to give. My chest tightened with a slow, spreading ache. They had manipulated him, used his trust, exploited his age. Madeline once joked, "Grandpa signs anything if you compliment his fishing stories first." We all laughed, except him. And now, it wasn't funny. I moved to the next envelope. A USB drive fell into my palm, small, black, unremarkable. Another sticky note. Watch, then decide. My breath caught. I looked toward the old laptop Walter kept in his study, still plugged in beneath the desk like it had been waiting for me. I inserted the USB. A single video file popped up. Lake House Camera Archive. "What camera?" I murmured, brows knitting. I hit play. Static flashed. Then the grainy image of Walter's study appeared on screen, taken from a tiny camera hidden in the bookshelves. I leaned forward as two figures entered the room. My father, my mother. They looked younger in the footage, but unmistakably themselves. "Where is he?" my mother asked. "Sleeping," my father replied calmly. "It's easier this way." He began sorting through Walter's papers as if they were his own. My mother hovered, voice clipped. "We need this approved before the audit cycle. Just sign it and leave it where he usually sits." My father hesitated. Then he did exactly that, signed Walter's name. Forged it. I covered my mouth as my stomach turned. This wasn't help. This wasn't family support. This was manipulation. This was control. This was theft. And Walter knew. He had filmed it, saved it, left it for me. My vision blurred for a moment, part anger, part heartbreak. The people who raised me, the people who looked me in the eye today and told me I wasn't worth more than $1, had betrayed the one man who ever saw my worth. I whispered into the empty room, "I won't let this stay buried." The lake house didn't feel silent anymore. It felt aligned, like for the first time, the walls were on my side. I gathered every binder, every envelope, every note, placing them carefully into a bag. My hands were steady now, my breath even. My fear replaced with something sharper. Resolve. My parents wanted me invisible. They wanted me quiet. They wanted me harmless. But Walter had given me the truth. And the truth was a weapon far more powerful than the $9.9 million they handed to my sister. The rain started just as I loaded the last binder into my car. Sharp, urgent drops pattering against the windshield like impatient fingers tapping. "Hurry! Keep going! Don't stop now." I didn't. I drove straight to the small inn near the ridge, Walter's favorite hideaway. He used to take me there for hot chocolate after long days at the lake house. Rosa, the owner, recognized me the moment I stepped through the door. "Evelyn?" she gasped softly, pressing a hand to her chest. "Oh, sweetheart, I'm so sorry about Walter. He adored you." Her voice trembled in a way my mother's never had. I swallowed the lump in my throat and managed a weak smile. "Could I get a room? Just for the night." She handed me a key immediately. "No charge. Walter paid ahead for a year, just in case you ever needed to stay." Just in case. My stomach flipped. He really had planned all of this. I locked the door to the small corner room and spread everything out across the bed. Binders, envelopes, sticky notes, the USB drive, the letter, and the brass key. The weight of them made the mattress sag. The truth wasn't hiding anymore, it was begging to be seen. I opened my laptop, hands steady, breathing focused. My grandfather's voice echoed in my head. "Patterns never lie, Evie. People do." The first thing I did was build a timeline, date by date, signature by signature, transaction by transaction. I recreated the foundation's financial history across almost a decade, color-coding each entry: green for legitimate transactions, yellow for suspicious transfers, red for forged signatures, blue for visits from my parents. The screen lit up like a map of wrongdoing, more yellow than green, more red than I wanted to believe. My father's name appeared everywhere he claimed he barely had time to help. My mother's initials showed up beside approvals she'd sworn she never touched. Madeline's name never appeared at all, yet she benefited from every dollar diverted. I clenched my jaw. This wasn't carelessness. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was deliberate, coordinated, methodical. They hadn't just bent the truth, they'd snapped it clean in half. I clicked into a cluster of transactions that happened the same month Walter first showed signs of memory lapses. The amounts were identical, $24,000, repeated 11 times, always routed through the same shell consultancy. A consultancy registered under my father's college roommate. My breath caught. I opened the next file. A board memo asking for Walter's approval for a strategic reallocation of funds. The typed justification was full of professional jargon, but the moment I zoomed in on the scanned signature, my chest tightened. It wasn't Walter's, not even close, I whispered. How could you do this to him? Then I clicked the video file again. My father's voice echoed through the dim room. Just sign it yourself. Walter won't notice. He trusts us. My mother replied, with the softness of a dagger wrapped in silk. That's why it works. My hands shook not from fear, but from something sharper, something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. Anger. Not the fleeting kind. Not the hot explosive kind. The cold kind. Precise. Focused. The kind that makes you remember everything. Everything they dismissed. Everything they ignored. Every time they claimed to know best. I opened the final binder. Foundation Long-Term Impact Projections. Walter had done the math himself. If the siphoning continued, the foundation would collapse within 5 years. Programs would shut down. Families who relied on grants would be abandoned. Patients relying on research initiatives would lose hope. My grandfather had seen it coming, and he knew no one, no board member, no auditor, no relative could stop it. Except me. A sticky note was attached to the last page. Evie, I'm sorry you have to carry this, but you've always been stronger than they made you believe. A tear slipped down my cheek before I could stop it. I wiped it away quickly, angry at myself for crying, but the weight of those words hit deeper than I expected. My phone buzzed. A text from Madeline. Madeline, Evelyn, please come home. Mom is upset. Dad wants to talk. Talk? After giving me $1? After forging the signature of the man who raised them both? After stealing from a foundation meant to help people grieving, struggling, fighting to survive? I typed, then deleted my reply. Instead, I powered off my phone. Let them stew. Let them worry. Let them feel the silence they forced on me for decades. It was nearly midnight when I uncovered the final envelope at the bottom of the pile. Unlike the others, it wasn't marked. Just plain white. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Not financial documents. Not legal warnings. But a letter. To me. From Walter. His handwriting wavered slightly, written near the end. I guessed. Evie. People will tell you you're too quiet to lead. Too gentle to fight. Too soft to see the truth. But you have always seen more than they realized. I trust you. Follow the truth wherever it leads, even if it leads you away from them. My heart cracked. This time the tears didn't fall, they boiled. I folded the letter, pressing it to my chest for a moment. Then I whispered into the quiet room. I will finish what you started, Grandpa. I promise. The storm outside finally broke, rain hammering against the windows like applause. Or warning. Either way, I knew what came next. I needed to confront the people who spent my entire life telling me I wasn't enough, and show them they had built their empire on lies. And Walter had given me the map. Morning came too fast. I barely slept, if at all. The truth felt like a second heartbeat under my skin, steady and insistent. I kept seeing the forged signatures, the grainy footage of my parents rifling through Walter's things, the quiet betrayal masked as family duty. By sunrise, something in me had settled. Not peace, not acceptance, a decision. I packed the binders, the envelopes, the USB, and Walter's final letter into my bag. The weight of them felt strangely grounding, as if holding the truth made my spine straighten on its own. When I reached my parents' house, both their cars were already in the driveway. Of course they were. They always woke early on days they wanted to feel productive, powerful, in control. Not today. I stepped inside without knocking. My mother, Linda, stood in the kitchen stirring cream into her coffee. The smell of expensive roast filled the air, warm, familiar, almost comforting, if not for the coldness beneath it. She turned, lifting her mug. "Oh, you're here," she said, as if I were an unexpected bill. My father, Henry, sat at the table reading emails on his tablet. He didn't look up. He hadn't expected me to come back. Not after the dollar. Madeline sat across from him, hands wrapped around a cup of tea she wasn't drinking. Her eyes lifted when she saw me, hopeful, worried, maybe even ashamed. "Evelyn," she whispered. We didn't mean." I raised a hand. "Don't, not yet." My mother clicked her tongue. "Evelyn, really? If this is about yesterday, let's not dramatize it. The will is done. Things are final. Dragging it out will only embarrass you." I almost laughed. "Embarrass me?" I placed my bag on the table. My father frowned. "What's that?" "Everything Walter left me," I said, voice steady. "Everything you hoped I'd never see." My father's jaw flexed. My mother scoffed. Madeline froze. I pulled out the first binder and laid it in front of them like a deck of cards in a poker game no one knew I'd learned to play. "Let's talk," I said softly. That softness made them uneasy. It wasn't the tone they were used to hearing from me. My father set down his tablet. "Evelyn, you're misunderstanding." I flipped the binder open to the first forged signature. "Am I?" Silence. Then his face drained of color. "Where did you get that?" "Does it matter?" I said. "Or is the more important question why you signed Walter's name on financial transfers worth over $2 million? My mother slammed her mug on the counter. "That is an outrageous accusation." I didn't flinch. She wasn't used to that. I opened the next page. "And this one? And this? And these emails you sent from your personal account recommending urgent reallocations without board approval?" My mother snatched the papers, flipping through them with growing panic. This is taken out of context." "What context?" I asked quietly. "Because the USB file makes everything pretty clear." Madeline's head jerked up. "USB? What USB?" I took it out of the bag and set it gently on the table. My father's hand twitched. "Evelyn, give that to me," he said, voice dropping into a tone I'd only heard when he spoke to subordinates he wanted to intimidate. "No." It was the first time in my life I'd said that word to him without shaking. His eyes darkened. I plugged the USB into the side of the TV mounted on the wall. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the screen flickered, and Walter's study appeared in grainy black and white. My mother's breath hitched. "No," she whispered. He couldn't have, but he had." The footage played. There was my father, sorting through Walter's files like they belonged to him. There was my mother, handing him documents she wanted approved before an audit. Madeline's hands flew to her mouth. "Mom, Dad, what is this?" My mother lurched forward and turned off the TV. The room plunged into a tense quiet. "That is an invasion of privacy," she snapped. "Actually," I said, meeting her gaze, "that's evidence." My father leaned back, eyes cold but calculating. "Evelyn, you need to think about what you're doing." "I have," I said. "Longer than you think." "And what?" My mother scoffed. "You think one forged signature means anything? Walter was old. He forgot things. He needed help." "Funny," I said, "that he remembered well enough to film you." Her mouth tightened. Madeline stood abruptly. "Why would you do this?" she demanded at our parents. "Why would you steal from a foundation you promised to protect?" "Steal?" my father barked. "We adjusted funds, that's all. For the good of the family." My voice sharpened. "For the good of your pockets." My mother's voice dropped to a warning whisper. "You think you know everything. But you were a child, Evelyn. You don't understand the complexities." "You're right," I interrupted. "I was a child, and you took advantage of that too." Silence. Thick. Suffocating. My father tried one more tactic, softening his tone. "Evelyn, this will destroy us." I held his gaze. "You destroyed yourselves the moment you put your greed above Walter's trust." Madeline sank into her chair, tears streaking her cheeks. My mother pressed a shaking hand to her forehead. "This is a misunderstanding. A family matter. We can fix this." "No," I said. "We can't." I closed the binder. "I'm giving you a chance to come clean before I take this further. But one way or another, the truth is coming out." My mother stared at me, really stared. For the first time in my life, as if seeing a stranger. As if realizing the daughter she tried to diminish had grown teeth, my father spoke faintly. "What are you planning?" I picked up Walter's brass key, letting it glint under the kitchen lights, finishing what he started. And for the first time, the silence in the room didn't belong to them. It belonged to me. The meeting wasn't my idea. It was Walter's. Or rather, it was part of the instructions he left behind. A sealed envelope in his desk, addressed to Mr. Robert Dalton, his longtime attorney. Inside, a set of directions. Convene the family at the lake house. Present everything at once. Let truth speak for itself. It was chilling how precisely he predicted what was coming. Mr. Dalton called early the next morning. His voice was calm, decisive, the sound of a man who had stood beside Walter through decades of difficult decisions. "Evelyn," he said, "I have reviewed the materials you forwarded. Your grandfather left clear instructions. We meet this afternoon, all of you." "All of us?" I repeated, heart pounding. "Yes, your parents, your sister, you, no exceptions." For a moment, I felt like a child again, sitting on the dock next to Walter, listening to ripples in the water. Only this time, I wasn't a silent observer. I was the one carrying the truth. The lake house felt different when I arrived, charged, almost humming with tension. Storm clouds churned above the trees, gathering like an audience settling in for the final act. My parents were already there. My father stood stiffly near the fireplace, arms crossed, jaw set in stone. My mother hovered by the window, fingers twitching at the hem of her designer blouse, anxious in a way she couldn't mask. Madeline paced in small circles, biting her lip. When I stepped inside, the room fell silent. Mr. Dalton cleared his throat. "Thank you for coming. Shall we begin?" My father stepped forward sharply. "Yes, tell us why we're here. Evelyn is making accusations she doesn't understand. We need to resolve this before things get unnecessarily complicated." Mr. Dalton didn't even blink. "No," he said calmly. "Mr. Hayes left extensive evidence, and instructions to present it with the entire family present." He placed a folder on the table. Thick, heavy, final. "Let's start with this." He pulled out a remote and pointed it at the TV mounted on the wall. The screen flickered to life. My mother's voice trembled. "What is that?" "Security footage," Dalton replied. "From the camera Mr. Hayes installed in his study 3 years ago." Apt to stop Sting, her face paled. "He had no right." "He had every right," Dalton said sharply. "It was his home, his office, his life's work being jeopardized." The footage began. My father entered the frame, first opening drawers, sifting through documents with unsettling familiarity. My mother followed, whispering sharply, "Hurry, he'll wake up." Madeline clapped a hand over her mouth. "Mom, Dad, no." My mother shook her head, voice cracking. This is manipulated. It's out of context." Dalton pressed pause. The frame froze on her face. "Is your signature also out of context?" he asked, pulling out copies of forged documents. He laid them out on the table one by one, like criminal exhibits in a courtroom. "And these transfers?" Thud. "Your husband's approvals?" Thud. "The repeated reallocation requests?" Thud. My father finally spoke cold, controlled. "This is absurd." Walter was confused. He needed assistance. "We were helping." I stepped forward. "Helping?" My voice shook, not with fear, but fury I'd swallowed for years. "You forged his signature. You diverted foundation money to a shell company. You robbed him, and by extension, every person he was trying to help." My father's jaw tightened. "You don't know." "No," I cut in. "I do. Walter made sure I did." Dalton opened another envelope. Inside was a document stamped with the foundation's seal. "Your grandfather amended his will 6 months before his passing. These are his final directives." He read aloud. "In the event of misconduct, financial manipulation, or breach of trust by Henry or Linda Carter, all remaining assets, including the lake house and controlling interest in the Hayes Foundation, shall transfer fully and solely to my granddaughter, Evelyn Carter, S's." My mother staggered back as if struck. No, that can't be right. He would never. She can't manage." Dalton raised a hand. "There's more." He pressed the remote again. Walter's face appeared on the screen, tired, older, but steady. His voice filled the room. "If this is being played, then I was right to prepare. Henry, Linda, I trusted you, and you broke that trust. I have seen what you did. This ends now." My mother sank into a chair, white as bone. Walter continued. "Evelyn, if you're watching this, Know that I left these instructions for you because you are the only one who listened, the only one who sees truth beneath the surface. Do not let them convince you otherwise. My vision blurred not with tears, but with a fierce, quiet resolve. My father swallowed hard. This is coercion. Walter was manipulated. She, Evelyn, must have pressured him. Dalton's voice sharpened. Enough. These documents are legally binding. His mental competency was verified by 2 physicians. Madeline turned to our parents, voice trembling. How could you do this? After everything he gave us? My mother finally broke. We did it for you, she whispered desperately to Madeline. For your future. For your opportunities. You don't understand. Madeline shook her head violently. No, I don't understand how you could choose money over him. My father slammed his fist on the table not as violence, but as a final show of control slipping away. You can't take everything from us. I stepped forward, placing Walter's brass key gently on the table. I'm not taking anything, I said softly. You lost it yourselves. Silence flooded the room, thick, heavy, undeniable. Dalton closed the folder. As of today, Evelyn is the sole beneficiary of the remaining estate, including controlling interest in the Hayes Foundation. My mother's voice shattered into a whisper. Please, Evelyn, don't do this. I met her eyes that had dismissed me, belittled me, erased me for years. I'm not doing anything, I said quietly. I'm honoring Walter's truth. The lake house creaked, as if exhaling after years of holding its breath. For the first time, the power in the room shifted to me, and no one could take it back. Silence. Heavy, choking silence. The kind that doesn't just fill a room, it exposes it. It forces everyone to see what they've done, who they've become, and what they can no longer run from. My parents didn't look like the polished, powerful couple they always pretended to be. They looked small, cornered, unmasked. My mother was the first to move. She stood abruptly from the chair, her breathing shallow, her fingers gripping the table's edge so hard her knuckles went white. Evelyn, she whispered, you don't understand what this will do to us. To you? I asked, voice quiet but piercing. Or to the people you stole from? She flinched, not because of my words, but because they came from me. The daughter she'd always believed was too soft, too silent, too forgettable to ever hold a weapon made of truth. Madeline wiped her eyes, mascara streaking down her cheeks. Mom, Dad, how long? She asked, voice cracking. How long have you been doing this? My father pressed a hand over his eyes, as if shielding himself from the question, but he couldn't hide. Years, I said gently, before he could answer. It's all in the files. Walter tracked everything. My mother spun toward me, desperation rising in her voice. Walter manipulated you, she said. He always favored you. He filled your head with ideas to turn you against us. I stepped closer. No. He taught me to listen. You're the ones who tried to convince me I deserved less. My father finally spoke, not loudly, not angrily, but with a fractured calm that somehow made everything worse. What do you want from us, Evelyn? Nothing, I replied. For once in my life, I don't want anything from either of you. He swallowed hard, jaw trembling. A man losing the last illusion of control he thought he had. Madeline let out a quiet sob. Dad? A foundation? You heard a foundation? Grandpa trusted you. Her voice wasn't angry. It was heartbroken. My father turned away, shoulders slumping. Your grandfather made things difficult. He never listened to reason. He didn't understand that money should be used, not hoarded. He understood perfectly, I said sharply. He understood that it wasn't your money to use. My mother shook her head, rapid and panicked. We did it for this family, she repeated, clinging to the phrase like a sinking ship to driftwood. For all of us. I met her eyes. You didn't do it for the family, I said. You did it for Madeline. To keep her on a pedestal. You used the foundation as your personal bank because you couldn't stand the idea of her being average. Madeline stiffened. Mom, is that true? My mother's lips parted but no sound came out. And in that moment, Madeline finally saw it, the favoritism she had always benefited from but never questioned. The imbalance. The lie. She stepped backward, shaking her head. All this time, and you let me believe it was because I earned it. My father sank into Walter's old chair, the weight of everything pulling him downward. We didn't mean for it to go this far, he muttered. But it did go this far, I replied. And now there are consequences. My mother looked at me with a flash of fury beneath her fear. You wouldn't dare ruin us. I leaned forward, steady, unwavering. I'm not ruining you. I'm revealing you. Her face crumpled. She staggered back, hitting the edge of the bookshelf. Madeline rushed to her side, but my mother pushed her away, overwhelmed by shame or anger I couldn't tell anymore. Dalton cleared his throat softly, reminding us he was still in the room. There are two paths, he said. Legal proceedings, or voluntary relinquishing of control and cooperation with restitution efforts. My parents stared at him as if the words were acid. You decide, Dalton continued. But either way, the foundation returns to Evelyn. My father looked up at me, eyes shining not with tears, but with the realization that for the first time, his words meant nothing. You won't survive this world, he said hoarsely. You don't have the spine for it, you're too gentle. I held his gaze. I'm gentle, I said softly. Not weak. There's a difference. Walter knew it. You didn't. Something inside him broke then. Not loudly. Not visibly. But I felt it. My mother looked away completely, unable to meet my eyes. Madeline approached me slowly. Evelyn, I didn't know, I swear. I didn't know. I believed her. For all her privilege, she had always been more oblivious than cruel. I know, I said. She took my hand. What happens now? I looked around the room, the lake house that held every memory of warmth I'd ever had, and now held the unraveling of everything cold. Now? I whispered. Now we move forward. Separately, if we have to. My father stood abruptly, shoulders stiff. We'll contest this, Dalton replied before I could. You can, but the clause is clear. If contested, all assets default to the foundation, not to you. My father froze. A checkmate. Delivered by Walter's foresight. My mother sank into a chair, defeated. Madeline squeezed my hand once more, and for the first time in my life, I stood in the center of the Carter family. Not invisible, not muted, not the shadow they used to cushion Madeline's spotlight, but as the only one who still had something unbroken. The truth. They couldn't take it from me. They couldn't distort it. They couldn't bury it. This time, it belonged to me alone. When the meeting ended, nobody moved. It was as if time itself had paused, giving the room a chance to absorb the truth that had shattered the Carter family. Dalton quietly packed the documents, his expression unreadable. The storm outside had finally calmed, leaving a soft drizzle tapping against the windows. My parents sat in silence, two figures who once towered over my life, now diminished, fragile, hollowed out by the weight of their choices. Madeline lingered near the doorway, eyes still red. Every so often, she glanced at me with fragile gratitude and guilt. Dalton gave me a nod, one of respect, not pity, before he exited the lake house. The moment the door closed, the world seemed to shift, like the house itself had exhaled. I was the first to speak. I need some air. No one tried to stop me. Not this time. I stepped outside, letting the screen door creak softly behind me. The sky had opened just enough for thin rays of gold to break through, turning the rain into glitter on the lake's surface. The air smelled like pine and wet earth, like childhood, like freedom. The dock stretched ahead, old wooden planks worn from countless summers with Walter. My footsteps echoed in the quiet as I walked to the end, the lake rippling gently below. I sat where he and I always used to sit, legs dangling, hands resting on the cool wood. For the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to breathe, really breathe. The silence wasn't heavy now. It was gentle, healing. Somewhere behind me, the lake house door opened. Madeline's soft footsteps approached, stopping a few feet away. Evelyn? She asked quietly. I didn't look back. I'm here. She took that as permission to sit beside me. We stared at the lake together, neither of us speaking for a long time. Finally, she said, I didn't know they were doing all of that. I know. But I should have seen something. I should have asked questions. I was so busy being the kid they wanted that I never noticed you were drowning. Her voice cracked. I'm sorry. I turned to her, surprised by how much sincerity lived in those 3 words. You weren't the problem, Madeline, I said gently. You were just the mirror they polished. I was the shadow they ignored. That wasn't your choice. She blinked hard. What happens now? I looked out across the water. I take over the foundation. I clean up the damage. I do what Walter wanted. And Mom and Dad? The question lingered, heavy. I sighed. I don't know yet. But the law will decide part of it, Dalton said that clearly. Beyond that, I need time. Madeline nodded, accepting the uncertainty. She stood slowly. I hope one day, you and I can fix things, she murmured. Not for them, for us. For the first time, I gave her a real smile. I hope so too. She left quietly, letting the moment belong to me. The lake was still, perfectly still. Walter once told me that water like this reflects everything exactly as it is. No distortions, no pretenses. If you wanted the truth, you had to wait for the ripples to settle. I let them settle now. All my life I had been told I was too quiet, too gentle, too unremarkable to matter, that my worth was small, that my place was behind Madeline's spotlight. But standing here, holding the truth Walter entrusted to me, I realized something powerful. Quiet is not the same as weak. Gentle is not the same as blind. And being overlooked is not the same as being powerless. Walter saw me long before I ever saw myself. And now, his foundation, his life's work was in my hands. Not because I demanded it, not because I fought for attention, but because he knew the truth would be safe with me. A breeze drifted across the lake, cool and soft. I closed my eyes. Thank you, I whispered into the quiet, for believing in me. The reply was silence, warm, comforting, familiar, the kind of silence that listens. By sunset, I walked back toward the house. My parents' car was already gone, their absence hanging in the air like an echo. I wasn't relieved, or vindicated, or triumphant. I was simply free. Free from years of comparison. Free from the role they forced on me. Free from the weight of never being enough. And in that freedom, I felt something I hadn't felt since childhood. I felt like myself. The woman Walter knew I could become. I paused at the doorway one last time, glancing back at the lake. The water was smooth as glass, reflecting the golden sky. Still water, still truth. I stepped inside, closing the door gently behind me. Tomorrow, I would meet Dalton to begin rebuilding the foundation. Tomorrow, I would decide how to handle the restitution process. Tomorrow, I would start the life I had earned, not the life they tried to assign me. But tonight, I allowed myself to rest, to breathe, to feel. Some endings arrive quietly, some freedoms too. And this one was mine.